Alright, so now we're into the final chapter of my childhood trauma series. These are the top three films which officially fucked me up as a child. That was pretty redundant to say, but oh well. Number three is Pet Sematary 2. Now, Pet Sematary 2 is far from what I would consider to be a great film. In fact, it's kind of stupid, but I still find it really entertaining, and it's definitely one of my guilty pleasures. And yeah, the first Pet Cemetery was pretty creepy. I mean, I think it goes without saying that the demonically possessed corpse of a baby coming after you with a straight razor is pretty damn disturbing. It almost sounded like there was a demon baby crying out in the background in that last clip. Disturbing. Anyway, the thing that makes the second movie stand out to me as far as childhood trauma is concerned is that the first time I saw Pet Cemetery 2, I had just recently moved in with my mother and my new stepfather. The fat kid in Pet Cemetery 2 has a stepfather who's a huge dick and, becomes a murdering psychopath after he's brought back from the dead. And somehow the psychopath version of him is more likable, which is even more fucked up. Now, my former stepdad was never particularly abusive to me, but I will admit he was kind of a douche, so naturally, to my childlike brain, being a big meanie was the same exact thing as being pure evil. So the fact that Pet Cemetery 2 had entered my life at that exact time led to some pretty strong fears. Number two on my list is Hellbound Hellraiser 2, a film which I watched for the first time in broad daylight. However, I was also home alone, so there were no adults around to change the channel or offer any kind of semblance of protection, and I suffered as a result. This makes two Clive Barker products that instilled fear in me as a child, which is a lot of two in this particular spot on the list. And in this case, I am much less ashamed to admit it because Hellbound is easily my favorite film out of the Hellraiser franchise. I love just how incredibly imaginative it is and how it builds upon the universe that the first film only hinted at. And I would like to give an honorable mention to the fourth film in the franchise, Bloodline. Uh, Way back in the day, I remember catching a clip of this movie on television, and it was the segment of Bloodline which took place during the modern day, where Pinhead was holding the main guy's little boy hostage, and threatened that he was going to wish for death for 1,000 years. He was just a little boy, about the same age as me. Now, up until the point that I had seen Hellbound, um, I was used to imagining hell as a place of fire. Um, I knew that according to the Christian religion, if I was bad my whole life, then I would end up burning forever.
Burn. Oh, such a limited imagination.
It is an understatement to say that the Hellraiser movies make that shit look tame. At the very young age of 10, I was introduced to the concept of this inescapable maze where you're forced to suffer the worst fate imaginable for all eternity, with your torturers being these twisted, nightmarish things that just barely look human. And this isn't even the scariest part, but I would say it was just the cherry on top that in order to escape hell, one of the main characters had to solve this puzzle box, which was transformed into like a diamond shape, and she had to turn it back into a cube. I can't even solve a goddamn Rubik's Cube. Now, before I get to number one, I want it to be established that the movies and shows on this list are not necessarily in order from least scary to scariest. In fact, if that was the case, then A Troll in Central Park wouldn't have been on the list at all, to be quite frank. Um, so yeah, the number one spot isn't taken by a movie that's scarier than Hellbound Hellraiser 2 by a long shot, but during my childhood years, it scared me quite a bit. Number one on my list is Child's Play. Now, I understand that for a lot of people, Child's Play isn't scary at all because Chucky's just a doll. And I totally agree with that. I mean, yeah, he's just a little doll. If he were to come after me now, I could just kick him in the face and uh, it would soon be over with. However, to people who were just little kids when they first saw the movie, it was the stuff of nightmares. I mean, the idea of one of your own toys being possessed by a serial killer that wanted to kill everybody in order to get to you was legitimately terrifying for me. And while it did get pretty silly that, a couple of grown ups were running from him at the end of the first movie, he did manage to sneak up on most of his victims and get them with the element of surprise. So the fact that he had brains did make him kind of threatening. And to top it all off, he is a creepy looking little fucker. On the subject of creepy visuals, as a kid, I always found it kind of deeply disturbing that this thing, which looked like a plastic child's toy, was able to shed blood just like an actual human being. Even when he was just acting like a toy, Chucky was the stuff of nightmares. Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play? But those are just the reasons that Chucky was scary to me. The thing which really earns Child's Play a number one spot on my list is the fact that even throughout my teenage years, even when I was as big as I was going to get, I continued having nightmares about Chucky. They only stopped happening sometime after I graduated high school. It may be hard to scare me now, but back in the day it wasn't. Anyway, that concludes my top 10 childhood trauma list, and I have to say, this has been a pretty fun bandwagon to jump on. If you're interested in checking out the original series, which I'm not officially a part of, I'll put a link to it in the description below. And I'm not usually the type of YouTuber to ask questions, but I'm curious. What were some of the most traumatic TV shows and movies that you saw when you were a kid? If you feel embarrassed by any of them, just check out part two of my series where I mentioned A Troll in Central Park. I don't think it can get any more ludicrous than being scared by that movie. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope you all have a good one.